So before we get to the teaching, which will be from the Svat Emet on the Parsha this week, let's just actually do sit. Allow ourselves to arrive. If this might be a new practice for you, I'm sure there are many for whom, I know there are many for whom you're daily or regular visitors, but if this is a new practice for you, or even if you're just renewing your practice in this new Jewish year, just to make a note of finding a posture that's upright, comfortable, not rigid, but dignified. You might think of the posture as we teach, embodying Jacob's ladder, Sulam Mutzav Artzav Rosho Magia Hashamaima, rooted in the ground, and its crown, its head extending up toward heaven. Maybe that helps you elongate just a little bit more if you're sitting. And if you're not sitting, however your body is arranged, to think about a dignified position and opening up that channel of Jacob's ladder. And then finding your anchor, if that's your breath, if it's a sound or a sensation, point of contact of your tushy in the seat, wherever your body might be. We read over Shabbat, Parshat Breshit, where the divine breathes the breath of life into Adam Harishon, the first human, making Adam into a Ruach Chaya, a Nefesh Chaya rather, a living being. And as we breathe, we can just be conscious of in every breath being renewed with that first primordial breath. Allow ourselves to notice sensations in our bodies, just to be present with them, present with whatever emotion is here, whatever sensation is here. As I say before our sits, every time I host, that I learned from my cousin, Rina Yehuda Newman. We can invite ourselves to close something that needs to be closed, a window in our computer, a window in our room, a door, and to open something that needs to be open. A channel in our neshama, part of our awareness. If you want to keep sitting with your eyes closed or practicing with your eyes closed, feel welcome to do that. I'm going to share a short teaching here on the screen. That is a teaching that my dear friend and colleague and longtime chavruta, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, first introduced to me. which is a teaching of the Sfat Emet, Rabbi Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger. Those of you who are doing text study with Rabbi Dr. Aaron Leib Smokler are already getting familiar with the Sfat Emet, if you're not already. One of the great Hasidic masters of the 19th century. And this is a teaching on Shabbat as refuge, like the Ark. And look at the second paragraph here. Shabbat is like Noah's Ark. He comments, Shabbat is like Noah's Ark. This week we read about the Mabul, we read about the flood and about constructing an ark, the image of that ark containing all of the remnant of life on the earth as the storm raged about. So we have Noah's Ark, Tevat Noach, but we also have Shabbat. Shabbos is like Noah's Ark, for during the week, we are all preoccupied with worldly business. I feel that even more this week. It's the first Tuesday I've been working in weeks that my kids have been going to school. It isn't Yom Tov. In the week, we're occupied with worldly business, but on Shabbat, there's enough spaciousness to retreat and let go of our preoccupations in order to take refuge under the shade of the wings of the Shekhinah, Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah, the loving divine presence. On Shabbat, there's enough spaciousness to retreat and let go of our preoccupations in order to take refuge under the shade of the wings of the Shekhinah, which spreads a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace over us as we're still in the waning moments of Tishrei, this last day of Tishrei. The sukkah is still with us. Maybe your sukkah still is up if you had one. Shabbos and the Shekhinah spread that Sukkot Shalom, the shelter of peace over us. And this is like Noah, who was hidden away in the ark, an act of surrender to the divine root of our life force, the Shoresh HaChiyut. Noah hidden away in the ark, Noah with his family and with all the animals and this remnant of life, surrendering to the divine root of our life force. For the whole world was being destroyed and needed to receive new vitality from the root of life. And so too, every Shabbos Kodesh, every Shabbat. So too every Shabbat. So I invite you as we continue our practice to try to cultivate that space of Shabbat within you. There are storms raging about, maybe literal storms. There are hurricanes, there are fires, there's so much that plagues our world. There's a pandemic, not for nothing, swirling about externally. And there is a teva, there is a place of refuge that we can go internally. And it doesn't just come every Friday evening, though it certainly comes then. But in every moment, that aspect of Shabbat mind, of Shabbat as refuge, is available to us. Can you find that point of Shabbat inside? Let's practice now for the next 12 or so minutes. Just try to cultivate that sense of spaciousness, sense of refuge, that sense that there is a place, there is a space, tachat kanfei hashchina, under the wings of the divine presence, where we experience love and protection, embrace. Whatever storm is going on, whatever is raging about externally, internally, in your mind, in your emotions, in your body. See if you can enter into that teva, that ark that's inside, that ark of Shabbos. I invite you to open your eyes. If you've had them closed, come back. Maybe be able to look around and see everybody else in the gallery. Thank you. We're going to take a moment now to give those who are saying Kaddish, remembering loved ones, a chance to do so. I invite you afterwards to stick around if you have any questions or feedback. I'd love to hear it. And if you're going to be leaving us, wish you Tzedchem l'Shalom. Hope to see you back here tomorrow or any other day at 12:30 Eastern. If you are saying Kaddish, we put the text up, and if you want to put in the chat who you have in mind, who you might be saying Kaddish for today, and also invite you to unmute yourself, and you can join me in reciting Kaddish together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbi.
Amen.
Yalma divra v'chei v'amlich mututei v'chayechon u'b'yomechon u'b'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'b'zman kariv v'yihru amen.
Amen.
Yehei
Shmei Rabba Mavorach Leolam
Le'olam
V'Mayamaya.
V'Mayamaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekud shelabrichu
Richu.
ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma
Amen.
Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Yimru Amen.
Amen.
Shalom B'Mamav Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Al Kol Yoshvei Tevel.
Amen.
All right. So again, thank you, and invite you to definitely to stick around. Oh, looks like the chat now sort of is working. No, we're having some technical difficulties that Adi tells me. You can feel welcome to either, looks like you can chat directly to me or you can chat to him. And in either way, if you want to chat me a question or feedback, absolutely, please do. I'll say that the teaching about Shabbat from the Sfat Emet, I actually first taught that I think sometime last year or in the last year to a group of Federation people, employees at the Federation in Houston, the Jewish Federation in Houston, who were at that time still, recovering from hurricanes, from Harvey, and had been battered, and then it was on top of the electrical crisis last winter, you may remember, and they were coming back for their very first in-person staff meeting, and trying to figure out, the Federation executive got in touch with me, and what can I do with this group, and so I helped her, identify some practice that she could do to help this group that had been carrying the community so much. And the notion of Shabbat as refuge and of the Ark was really resonant with them. So, all right, let's see here. Great, here's a question. What do you recommend to do with your mindfulness practice when you are so worried about loved ones that you cannot succeed in efforts to find a shelter of peace? That is a hard question. And I'll say, like, I confronted that just this week. My wife and I went to a wedding of a close relative, and it was our first indoor wedding at the Ritz-Carlton, and there were 200 people, and about half of them were masked. And granted, there's high vaccination rates here and low incidence and everything, but I felt myself, most important thing is I felt myself going to this place of just getting, entering the ceremony and just feeling, agitated and judgmental. And I started down the downward spiraling path of feeling that judgmentalism, then beating myself up for feeling it, and feeling bad that I wasn't there to be fully, full-hearted for the bride and groom. And and I felt like that was a different moment. It was a real new test for my own practice of when you're in a moment of, it's not just trauma, and it's not only even a small thing, but it's there's so many conflicting pulls and a public element to it, and a feeling about personal safety. And I'll just say it was hard. It was hard. It doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. And to then be compassionate with ourselves to say, you know what, it doesn't always work. And sometimes you're going to feel agitated and upset, and anxiety is present, and that's okay, right? It's okay for there to be anxiety. I don't have to, at least I can give myself the gift of not beating myself up for the fact that I'm feeling anxiety, right? And I did find that the next day, yesterday, I was still feeling agitated that morning, and my wife looked at me, she's like, I think you need some time. And I said, I don't know what time I can take. And she said, if this was one of our children, what would you do? And I realized, okay, there's a meeting or two that I could probably cancel and make some time for myself to give myself that space. And that was a very helpful reminder. So, I think that's a long answer to your question, which is to say I'm far from, an expert at it. And, but that was how I approached it recently. There's another question here about when there are storms swirling about and emotions run amok, it is hard to remember that we have that place within us. Any ideas on how to do that? That's such an important insight. I'm reminded of a teaching of the Netivot Shalom, the Slonimer Rebbe, who on the seventh day of Pesach, and talking about crossing the Red Sea. And he says in that teaching that sometimes we have to have faith that we have faith. Just remind ourselves that we have the capacity for it. You might not even feel it right now. It's like the old Hasidic story of like, they lost we lost the tune and the words and everything, and even the place in the woods, but we know that they did it. Right. And so even just reminding ourselves, just some cognitive reminder to ourselves of, oh, hold on a minute. There might be something else that's available. I might even not be able to get there right now because it's all so heavy, but just a reminder to ourselves of a cognitive check that might remind us that there is that place within us. Or in my case, also, another person can be really helpful too. The Talmud talks about o chavruta o mituta, either have a chavruta or die, right? That friendship and companionship and people in our lives who can cue us and remind us that there is other space, there is something beside the moment that we're inhabiting, right? Or the way that we're interpreting that moment. There isn't actually anything beside the moment that we're inhabiting, but it's all real, and there are alternatives to how we might process and respond to that moment. So, question, is the Ark and Shabbat like a womb from which we can be reborn? That's a beautiful image. It's a beautiful image, or a mikvah. And sure, absolutely. Like, I think if that's an image that works for you and speaks to you, go with it. I think that's that absolutely can be like that. And I would just say that, mikvah, certainly, right, is an image here that's at play, and Shabbat also as a time of, mikvah, of purification and immersion and in reemergence. Bamia, thanks so much for this question. You wrote directly to me. I'm wondering about Shalom Bayit and how to create that refuge of peacefulness for myself and my child in my home. Come to the talk with Lisa Miller tonight, because this is it was one of the questions I'm planning to ask her. She wrote another book called The Spiritual Child. We're talking about her second book, The Awakened Brain, but her first book called The Spiritual Child. And in her book, The Awakened Brain, it's more memoir, or it's as much memoir as research. And she talks a lot, she gives some images or some glimpses of her parenting. And I'm really curious to ask her how she does that. For me, I will confess that, like, I have one who's in college, I got one who's a 16-year-old, and I have one who's 8. And I'm still working on the ways to share my spiritual life with them. The first thing I'm doing is really, making sure I'm working on my own practice and trying to show up in the ways that I want to show up for them. Trying to be more grounded, more compassionate, more in touch with my chesed, and more mindful in my speech and in my presence. But inviting them into that and developing their own language of that is work in and of itself. And I think, Bamia, it's a great question. I would also, by the way, give a shout out. There's a wonderful organization that I was involved in co-founding several years ago called Arot here in Chicago, and one of the programs that they run, Rebecca Menkes-Lieberman started this program called Peaceful Parent, which is all about this, about how to be that kind of a parent and how to make that home. And so Orot, O-R-O-T, so Orot Center for New Jewish Learning in Chicago, but they're obviously online, and I would definitely encourage you to check them out. Okay, let's see. Some nice comments back here. I found the image of the Ark as a refuge in a storm very comforting, and it helped me find that place within, even in the midst of feeling anxious, that there's a way to find some serenity. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. And Carol connects it to the language in our liturgy of Ahava Rabbah and Rabbah Emunatecha, that the divine has great love for us, and that the divine's faithfulness in us, faith in us, is immense. And those can also maybe go to liturgy can help sometimes if we need reminders, right? That's what it's there for. Sometimes we might not be feeling it, we might not be in the zone, and liturgy can help us, right, reawaken that and can invite us back into it. Uriella says, having someone listen to us can be helpful, allowing ourselves to feel fear or terror, and they can stay lovingly listening. That's beautiful, right? The practice of compassionate listening, of being heard, right, and being witnessed to. Absolutely. Wonderful. Gail offers that regarding kids, the Musar Institute, another wonderful organization, is starting a new program just for kids. I'll also add that we at IJS have a program called Educating for Jewish Spiritual Life, which is for educators and teachers in schools. And we're certainly looking to do more to help with parents. So Deborah asked the question, how do you find calmness before Shabbat? I think, Deborah, you're asking specifically about Shabbos, about Friday afternoon. Well, for me, first of all, I have a standing appointment on my calendar that says at 3 p.m. on Friday, no appointments. So nobody can. I'm a busy guy, and people can book time on my calendar, right? When I'm scheduling meetings, it fills up really quick. But so I have it. It's kadosh. It's just there, and it's set aside that like Friday afternoon, I don't have any appointments, so that I'm available to myself, to my family, just to be able to be present and not go into Shabbat in a harried, frenzied way. We in our home keep a traditional Shabbat, a halachic Shabbat, and that means that everything has to be cooked before Shabbat. And we're in the season now where it's getting earlier and earlier, and in a month, the clock's going to fall back another hour, and Shabbat starts at 4 p.m. and it's insane. But carving out that time to be able to prepare, right, is first and foremost. Giving ourselves the gift of time is really important. And then I also find that, it's not so much entering Shabbat, but Shabbat morning for me has really become, through the pandemic and through my own developing practice, has really become a time for me to just inhabit a very different kind of space. I mean, first of all, for the whole 25 hours of Shabbat, not having my phone on, right, not having technology, not being in the pace of that world is very much a piece of refuge. In fact, before the age of phones, I stopped subscribing to newspapers on Shabbat. Like, I just didn't want to have that crush of all of that. That was important. Being mindful about what I'm reading, being mindful of how I'm just being present and being with my family. And then also in Shabbat morning now that, my practice has really become, I've been going to shul for, I don't know, a year or so now since the pandemic, but that when I enter in, that I really start with about 20 minutes of sitting and practice, no matter what else is going on. But that that's the beginning for me. And that then I don't feel the pressure to have to pick up the liturgy and know where everybody's at exactly and be right. I'm going at my own pace and letting my rhythm meet up with where the community is. So those are a couple of pieces. And then I would also say, throughout Shabbat, then the rest of that practice and, culminating in Havdalah, a wonderful practice also, Havdalah, is don't go and run in our houses, don't go and run and turn on the phone right afterwards. There's the concept of Malava Malka, of escorting the queen, escorting the Shabbat queen afterwards. And so let it linger. Just because it's Havdalah doesn't mean it's all, you want to go right back into the mindlessness. You want to let's savor the spaciousness of the Teva of the Ark. And there's one more comment I had, and then I think it'll be a good place to wrap up. This is just a lovely comment that was sent to me. Interesting that you brought up letting friendship remind you of a loving place of refuge. I had a near insight of that idea, in that as I was opening to that metaphor of Noah's Ark, I realized that there is a relationship that has been a place of joy, the place where when we are together, there's no place I would rather be, and that person is dying. The meditation today was a helpful, bittersweet, perhaps, reminder that I need to remember there's always a place beyond what we understand here on earth, and being open to that restorative place. Thank you for helping me remember that in the days ahead. And that's from Bird, and just sending you brachot of strength and resilience and comfort, and being with that beloved person, with them and escorting them. Thank you for sharing that. So thank you, everybody, for today's practice. Really, really enjoyed being with you. I'm planning to be back next Tuesday and hosting, and hope you will be back tomorrow or as soon as you can, and feel moved at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 here in the Central Time Zone, or wherever you are. Thanks so much.